Hello there, my name is Jamil and I'm from Africa, Tanzania to be exact. And due to certain complications, I was born without arms. This means I have to use my feet for everything, like brushing my teeth and doing chores, so basically I'm always barefoot. But this also means that I can't defend myself in certain situations. And there are certainly people out there who would take advantage of someone like myself. I learned this the hard way after moving to the States with my adoptive mother at age 5. But let me start from the beginning, since my disability, skin color, and manner of dress possibly contributed to what happened to me. Also, fair warning, this takes place in 1989, so expect some racial tension later on. I was raised in a shabby, rundown orphanage in Arusha City. I never knew my parents, so the staff, who were usually underpaid and overworked, served as my caretakers. Unsurprisingly, they disliked kids with disabilities, mainly because they required more effort and patience than regular kids. So, as you can imagine, they made my life difficult, and the other kids didn't treat me any better. My future started to look a bit brighter when an American woman came in to adopt me. Her name was Marie. She had white skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes, and she was very kind. She didn't look at me like I was some pitiful creature, but a normal child deserving of love. She was everything I hoped for in a mother. After talking and playing with me a bit, she asked if I wanted to come with her to Chicago, and I said yes. After signing the paperwork, Marie gave me some Western-style clothes to wear since I couldn't show up in the States wearing a loincloth. I found this odd because all the boys my age wore nothing but loincloths. That's just how it's always been, and I never really questioned it. Things like differences in climate and Western public opinion never once crossed my mind. But I shrugged and put them on. Once I was dressed, it was time to go. After a long flight, we took a cab to a small, quiet suburb in Chicago. Townhouses were lined up next to each other in identical rows. Some old folks were sitting on their porch when they turned to look at me. Based on their shocked expressions, I was the first and only black kid in the neighborhood. And also the first one to have no arms. Marie assured me that the neighbors were harmless and that I shouldn't let them get me down, so I didn't. Being in a different culture was still tough, but Marie was quite patient with my adjustment to this new life. And she was also very accommodating, so much so that she said I never had to wear Western clothes as long as I lived under her roof. Instead, she encouraged me to walk around in just my traditional African garment, a single bright orange loincloth. No socks, no pants, no shirts. She wanted me to be me, in her own words, as African as possible. I didn't have a problem with that since that's how I always dressed anyway, so that's what I chose to wear around the house. Marie offered to make me new loincloths of varying colors so I'd always have more than one pair, to which I happily accepted. The fact that she was willing to do all this just to make me feel more at home was enough to make me happy. I felt like she actually valued me being a part of her life. Over the next few days, Marie and I spent lots of time together in the front yard. She typically chased me around or sit under a tree and watch me run around. This is when things started to go south. As I was playing, 2 white men who I assumed were Marie's friends walked up to our fence and looked straight at me. I looked back at them and smiled, but then their faces contorted into the most hateful glares I'd ever seen. It was enough to make me tremble in fear as I took a few steps back. I was only 5 and I didn't understand things like discrimination, so I chalked it up to them being startled by my appearance. A half-naked African boy with no arms running around in a loincloth and bare feet isn't exactly typical in white neighborhoods, especially not in 1989. It was only after they noticed Marie sitting under a tree behind me that they completely changed their tune. "Oh, hey Marie, didn't see you there," one of the men said, giving my mom a warm smile. "Hello John, hey Mac. Have you met my son? His name is Jamil," she replied with a smile. I don't think she saw the hateful looks they were giving me a moment ago. She was pretty far behind me and she could have been looking at something else. The man, now known as John, looked down at me and smiled. He's a cute kid. Hey, would it be alright if he had lunch with us at our place? We've got roasted meat." "Sure, if that's what Jamil wants," she said, looking at me. I froze for a moment, not quite sure what to say. I'd never accepted an invitation before, mainly because I'd never been invited to anything before. Was it normal in America for a mother to let her son have lunch at a stranger's house? Then again, she knew them by name, so they weren't strangers to her. But I also didn't forget how they were looking at me just a moment ago. I thought about declining, but part of me wanted to get along with everybody in the neighborhood, especially since they were friends of Marie. "Okay, I'll go," I said. "Well, all right then. Let's go, little buddy," John said, acting like we were friends. I followed the two men back to their house, which turned out to be right next door. "So what's for lunch?" I asked them. The two men didn't say a word to me. They didn't speak the entire walk. Their demeanor changed completely once we were far enough away from my mom. As Mac unlocked the door, I looked to my left and saw Marie waving at me in the yard. I raised my right foot in the air and waved back before entering the neighbor's house. Once I was inside, they locked the door behind me. I didn't get a good look at the place before John put his hand against my back and pushed me in the direction of the kitchen. He seemed eager to get me into the kitchen, but his face told me he wasn't happy to have me as a guest. It was strange, and the house was eerily quiet. All I could hear were the soles of my bare feet slapping against the tiled floor as I scampered awkwardly into the kitchen. The way they were talking to me in front of Marie, they made it sound like this was going to be a fun time, but all I felt was disturbed. "Lunch will be ready soon," John finally spoke, but in a deadpan tone. "Just have a seat on the table and we'll prepare it," Max said before leaving the kitchen. "On the table?" I asked curiously. I'd never heard of sitting on the table to eat, but I was a stranger to this culture and very naive, so I did as I was told. Mac returned, but instead of bringing plates or even food, he had 2 belts in his hand. He then proceeded to tie my ankles to each leg of the table, forcing my legs apart to make a V shape. "This is so you don't fall off the table," he said politely to quell my growing concern. I just nodded, finding all of this strange, but I didn't resist. Once both of my ankles were secured to the legs of the table and my feet spread out, John pushed me flat on my back with his hand and wouldn't let me get up. "What are you doing?" I asked in a shaky voice, growing more suspicious by the second. "You're our dinner guest, so you don't have to sit up. Just relax and lie down while we prepare your food," John said politely, acting like a friendly neighbor. Again, this seemed to calm me down, and I laid flat on the table like he wanted. I watched as the two men reached into drawers and pulled out various knives and other utensils, then lined them up next to my body. The two began to whisper to each other as they got plates. Before they could do anything else, the doorbell rang. Both men stopped in their tracks and looked at each other, then at me, and whispered amongst themselves again. John answered the door while Mac began hastily untying my ankles. Marie was at the door, asking if she could eat with us. As Mac helped me off the table, he said to me they were out of food and I should eat at home. I was a little disappointed I didn't get to eat, but happy that I could go home with Marie. This place was a little too weird for me. As Marie and I walked back home, Marie casually asked me what happened, and me, being the dumb, naive kid that I was, didn't really articulate the severity of the situation. I simply said they were looking for food while I was at the table. Marie seemed content with the answer and placed an arm around me, pulling me close to her. I don't know if she figured out something was going on, but from that day forward, she didn't let me go to anyone's house by myself. And she didn't talk to those guys much either. To this day, I don't know if those guys were planning to eat me or torture me, but the fact that they stopped when Marie came over tells me they didn't have good intentions. Either way, I'm glad Marie was there for me. Now's the time to find out if this story actually happened. I'm curious to know what you guys think, and I'd love to hear in the comments if you thought it really happened or not. And the answer is, it is a true story submitted to me. Thank you so much, Jamil, for this story. It was wonderfully written. I really appreciate your submission, and I hope I did your story justice. Until next time, have a creepy day.